This video is about advantage play. There's often confusion with regards to the definition of advantage play. The only definition that concerns me is whether it breaches any laws in the jurisdiction that it's practiced in. I don't care if it's against someone's house rules or someone's arbitrary idea of right and wrong. As long as the consequences don't involve policemen, handcuffs, or time as someone's girlfriend in a 6x4 prison cell, it's all good with me. If the law's unclear, I'll draw my own line in the sand. Affecting the outcome of a game is on one side of that line, and predicting it is on the other. Casino games are only predictable if someone's sleeping on the job. You can't beat a well-designed game if everyone's on the ball. Some games lend themselves to prediction more than others, and some are damn near impossible to beat. We'll start with blackjack. Ed Thorpe created some discomfort for casino executives when he wrote the book on card counting half a century ago. So let's have a look at what it's really all about. Unless you're Rain Man or his brother, a lot of work goes into the business of trying to beat blackjack. There's a whole raft of tools available to the professional advantage player. We'll have a look at some of the most important ones. Before we even consider learning how to play the game, we need to understand risk. We need to have a firm grasp of volatility and what it can do to a player's bankroll no matter how good he is. Professional players use a financial model known as the Kelly criterion. In simple terms, the Kelly criterion states that one bet that portion of one's bankroll equal to the risk. Kelly betting, also known as optimal betting, is a very efficient way to ensure that volatility doesn't wipe you out. You're always betting in proportion to the risk and in proportion to your available funds. Kelly betting is the cornerstone on which professional bankrolls are built. If we haven't been scared away by the volatility demon, we can now learn how to play the game. This is Norm-Wartenberg's CVX. It's a blackjack engine. These engines have been around for decades and are a solid professional workhorse. You enter the rules of the game, your betting system, and dozens of other esoteric parameters, and the program generates a complete playing strategy along with various other niceties. The program will not only show you exactly how to play the game, it will tell you exactly what your expectation is, expressed as a percentage of turnover. This isn't intended as a card-counting primer. I know most of you have got a good handle on the principles, so I'll cover them quickly. We'll look at the most popular count, which is the high-low count. Cards are allocated values as follows: 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 are +1, 7, 8 and 9 are 0 or neutral, 10, Jack, Queen, King, Ace are -1. These values are added and subtracted as the cards are dealt. The rolling value is known as the running count. Each digit of positive count confers 0.5% advantage to the player. Each digit of negative count confers 0.5% disadvantage. If more than one deck is in use, the running count has to be normalized to one deck by dividing the running count by the decks remaining to be played. The result of this division is called the true count. Okay, we've got all that. How much are we going to make? Well, that depends on our risk of ruin tolerance. Risk of ruin refers to the risk of going broke before reaching our goal. Most professional players would not play off greater than a 5% element of ruin. That is to say, a 95% chance of doubling their bankroll versus a 5% chance of tapping out. A 95% chance of doubling your money sounds conservative, but it's not. It's exactly the same as putting a gun to your head with 1 bullet and 19 empty chambers. Every 20th pull of the trigger you'll give yourself a nasty headache. The top players actually work off a much smaller element of ruin. Their risk of going broke is less than 1/2%. If we want to play on a £25 table, with the not-so-conservative 5% risk of ruin, our software tells us we need 2,450 units, or over £61,000, to be 95% certain of making, you ready for this? Half a unit per hour, or £12.50 on a fast table. If you wanted to increase your bet size off the same bankroll, your element of ruin increases exponentially. You'd self-destruct every third pull of the trigger. I think it's now clear that card counters don't warrant a knee-jerk reaction. In fact, I don't know of one single professional player who's feeding his family off today's shitty blackjack offerings. So now we know there's no serious money to be made out of card counting. What happened to all the advantage players? Did they all go off and get real jobs? Well, no, they didn't, otherwise this would be a very short video. Before I go on to talk about more sophisticated techniques, I'd like to take a moment to discuss a couple of plays that are not really suited to small clubs, but work well in large casinos with lots of blackjack tables. The first is a hit-and-run technique known as wonging, after Stanford Wong, the blackjack author. Wonging, or back counting, involves a player, usually standing off from the table, counting down a shoe and only placing bets in advantage situations, usually at a true 2 and above. This technique is ideally suited to a player building his bankroll because he doesn't have to place bets in disadvantaged situations, as is the case when one plays through a whole shoe. The next technique, also employed in larger casinos, is team play. One would think that 4 players, each with a 50-gram bankroll, who form a team, would each be playing off a 50-gram bankroll. This would be the case if they sat at the same table, but if they sit at separate tables, they each play off the combined bankroll of 200k. 4 players playing on 4 separate tables is exactly the same as 1 player playing on 1 table and getting 4 times the hands per hour. The concept of joint bankroll is an important one. It has the effect of compressing time, increasing turnover, and reducing volatility. Okay, that's the elementary stuff out of the way. Let's now try and get on top of some of the more sophisticated advantage play techniques. This is a shuffle mapping or analyzing program. These analyzers have also been around for a couple of decades. This is Mesa Verde's latest offering. Once again, this is not a shuffle tracking primer. It's more by way of an overview. In a nutshell, shuffle tracking involves tracking individual cards or groups of cards during the course of a game and as they go into the discard tray, with a view to anticipating their reintroduction during the next shoe. We're going to have a look at a day in the life of a shuffle tracker. A shuffle tracker would watch and memorize a shuffle procedure so that she could enter all the steps into the software for later analysis. We can analyze a shuffle in any number of ways. The stack on the left are the cards in the discard tray. The stack on the right are the cards post-shuffle. We can see where the cards go to and where they came from. The stack on the left is a 6-deck shoe broken down to half decks. Card counters keep a running count of the cards from the first card dealt to the last card in the discard tray. To ensure the bets correlate with the advantage, true count conversion is done at the end of every round. That's not what shuffle trackers do. Shuffle trackers keep a separate count of each deck or section, such that they end up with a count per deck profile of the whole shoe. Given that our software tells us where the decks or sections end up after the shuffle, we can now see the value of keeping separate counts of each section. These 4 sections come together in the first half of deck 2 after the shuffle. In this case, the first half of deck 2 is very rich in low cards, and naturally our tracker cuts the low cards out of play. Don't worry if this section seems a little complicated. It'll all become crystal clear when we workshop it later. Now it's time to get serious. We're going to look at the singularly most profitable technique in blackjack advantage play. Professionals refer to this technique as sequencing. Casino people know it as ace locating. We looked at our shuffle mapper software earlier, which showed us where the decks end up after the shuffle. This program is also able to give us a card-by-card placement approximation. We'll go into this in more depth in our shuffle workshop, but here's an overview of the principles. Our analysis has shown that a sequence of cards remains intact after the shuffle. The cards are not in contiguous sequence. Each card is separated by one or more random cards, depending on how many passes have been executed. More on that later. So if we can remember the 3 cards that will be placed on top of an ace as they go into the discard tray, we should be able to identify this sequence in the next shoe. In this case, the cards that we want to remember are the Queen of Diamonds, 3 of Diamonds, and 8 of Hearts. These are our key cards. So what makes an ace so special? Having an ace dealt as the first card gives the player a 52% advantage. It doesn't get any better than that. Why on earth would you want to eke out a living counting cards with a 1% advantage on a good day when every ace you catch is worth 52%? The footage you're about to see is unique. It shows the most respected blackjack authority in the world, the professional's professional, the man who wrote the book on shuffle tracking and rewrote the book on ace location, sequencing aces through a very difficult shuffle. Actually, his wife is sequencing or ace keying, the male is tracking turnover, but that's a whole nother story. Watch the opening sequence carefully. You'll see the male start to place a $10,000 bet, but the female waves him off and places a table minimum bet of $200. So the female places a $200 bet and gets a pair of tens against the dealer's 6. You can almost hear her brain racing in high gear as she assesses her options. You can see her go for her chips to split the tens, but she hits instead. Now why on earth would you hit a pair of tens against a 6? Well, you wouldn't, would you, unless you knew what was coming. Now our key girl didn't know that the next card was going to be a 5, but this is her dilemma. The dealer's got a 6 up, so no matter what the next card is, even if it's a 10, the dealer's going to draw a third card, and our key girl knows that this third card is going to be an ace. The only way she can prevent the dealer from drawing that ace is to bust out her own hand. So the dealer takes the small bet and the male places a table maximum bet of $10,000. Pretty to watch, isn't it? If you think hitting a pair of tens was cheeky, how about a bet spread of $200 to $70,000? Well, our dancing dealer finds it funny anyway. The footage you've just seen represents the best of the best, but it doesn't tell the whole story by any means. This footage doesn't show the camouflage in acting that allowed them to nearly get away without detection. The dealers dancing and smiling might give some clue as to how well their act went down, but this wasn't just about trying to get huge amounts of money on the layout in extreme advantage situations. It was also about maximizing return from a rebate on loss program. It's beyond the scope of this overview to delve into casino incentive programs. We cover those in one of our workshops.